Hello everyone, it's me Pratima. So today I'm bringing you the ultimate comparison between two of the hottest flagship phones right now, the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Personally, I have been an iPhone user for years now. I've been daily driving the iPhone 14 Pro Max since its launch, but for the last 2 months, I've also been using the Galaxy S23 Ultra side by side. So I really took my time to get to know the S23 Ultra better to prepare for this video. And what I can tell is almost all the complaints that I had with last year's S22 Ultra have been addressed here, and I am immensely happy to finally see a flagship Android phone that goes toe-to-toe with the latest iPhone. Okay, let me first talk about the price of these devices. While both of these phones cost pretty much the same in the US, it's an entirely different story here in the South Asian markets because the iPhone 14 Pro Max is considerably more expensive. Plus, you also get occasional price drops and bank offers on Samsung, which also make it more appealing price-wise. But when it comes to resale value, you always get a much better price on iPhones, and Samsung phones have some of the worst after sale value. Anyway, this time what I like about Samsung is that they have copied iPhone's philosophy of not needlessly switching the design year after year. You might say this look lazy or boring, but I think it's more about setting a proper identity instead. With a quick glance, you can now easily tell that this is a Samsung phone. Besides their look, the iPhone 14 Pro Max and the S23 Ultra are also a couple of really well-built premium phones. But I find the S23 Ultra a lot more comfortable on my hands since unlike the iPhone, it has a slightly better weight distribution and it does not feel that bulky to hold. One of the reasons why the iPhone is comparatively heavy is because of this stainless steel frames. This thing is substantially stronger and heavier than aluminum frames that you find on the S23 Ultra. So if you happen to drop these phones from their side, chances are that the iPhone is going to survive it a lot more easily with nothing to show for it, whereas the S23 Ultra's aluminum frames might catch dents and scuff. But overall, the durability of these phones is quite similar. The iPhone 14 Pro Max gets ceramic shield on the display and glass protection at the back, whereas Samsung has used the latest Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on both the sides. Now, I am not brave enough to drop test these phones by myself, but looking at the one that Phone Buff did, it turns out that the Galaxy S23 Ultra has marginally better durability this time around. Likewise, both these flagships are IP68 dust and water resistant too, but interestingly enough, their actual water resistance property is vastly different. Samsung says the S23 Ultra can survive up to 30 minutes in 1.5 meters deep water, but the iPhone is good up to 6 meters deep for 30 minutes. Now, getting to display, I guess it goes without saying that these phones have some of the best displays that you can get on a 2023 smartphone. From a smooth 120Hz refresh rate to high brightness levels, sharp resolution, and LTPO technology for dynamically adjusting the refresh rate, you get it all here. But for me, the video watching experience on the Galaxy S23 Ultra feels slightly better most of the time. The thing is, Samsung lets you choose between a couple of color profiles. Say you're a fan of lively punchy colors, then the vivid mode is going to look fantastic. Obviously, it's not the most color accurate setting or anything, but the color details and contrast levels here look much more pleasing to the eyes, especially when watching movies and stuff. And the S23 Ultra's tiny non-obtrusive camera cutout also adds to an immersive viewing experience, unlike the iPhone's dynamic island, which ends up being distracting since it takes up a rather significant chunk of screen space. Still in all, the S23 Ultra only supports HDR10 Plus for high-quality video streaming, whereas iPhone can also play Dolby Vision mastered content. The iPhone 14 Pro Max also outdoes the S23 Ultra in terms of brightness. It has a peak brightness of 2000 nits versus 1750 nits on Samsung. So even under bright outdoor conditions, the iPhone is going to maintain slightly better visibility. Anyway, the way these phones' speakers are tuned is wildly different. The iPhone produces real nice mids and high frequencies which sound great when listening to acoustic and classical songs. And I find the richness and clarity of dialogues in shows or movies to be quite enjoyable here too. Whereas the S23 Ultra is more about letting you enjoy a wider soundstage with emphasis on spatial wideness. Plus, compared to the iPhone 14 Pro Max, I found that its bass response is also noticeably stronger.
If I could, I would give something new, then I would have what it takes. Make you feel like you're safe, 'cause all I need is just someone like you, someone like you, someone like you.
Like audio, these phones have a distinct type of haptics as well. The iPhone's vibration feedback is super strong for incoming calls, but super weak when typing up messages and things. On the other hand, S23 Ultra's haptics is not as powerful for calls, but plenty enjoyable when interacting with the phone, including the keyboard's feedback. Okay, let's now talk about the performance side of things. So over the years, this is one area where Apple always had a clear win over Android phones. Apple's processors have always been known for balance between power and optimization, but Qualcomm's flagship chip for 2023, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, finally challenges Apple's historic dominance. For the Galaxy S23 series, Samsung has even worked together with Qualcomm to use a bespoke Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy chip, which is slightly better than the regular 8 Gen 2, both in terms of performance and thermals. So what this all means is that the A16 Bionic and that custom Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor are incredibly neck and neck as far as the performance is concerned. Therefore, the biggest performance differences you will find between these two phones is definitely in their software experience. Samsung's One UI is notably rich in terms of features and customization options as most Androids. There's stuff like split screen and edge panel, which I don't use that often, but these are still very handy features. However, I still find the system animations and app optimizations better on iOS. Samsung has been working to optimize popular social media apps like Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok since last year, but still they're not at the same level as iPhones yet, especially when it comes to app fluidity. Other than this, both One UI and iOS are more than reliable for your everyday tasks. I ran my app opening, multitasking, and memory management test between 15 apps, and both of them posted very similar results. Even in terms of future software updates, you're looking at two of the best companies in the business. Apple does not commit to any specific update timeline for any of its products, but we know that iPhone 14 Pro Max is going to receive at least 5 years of updates based on past Apple trends. Likewise, Samsung has promised 4 generations of OS and 5 years of security updates for the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Okay, what about gaming then? Let me just say right away, the S23 Ultra is considerably better than iPhone in this contest. First off, Samsung has massively upgraded the vapor chamber cooling on this phone compared to the Galaxy S22 Ultra, while Apple continues to use an inferior graphite-based cooling solution on its latest iPhones. As a result, in practically all the games that I tested, the iPhone finished hotter of the two. The iPhone 14 Pro Max easily climbed over 40 degrees Celsius in titles like Genshin Impact, PUBG Mobile, and Apex Legends, but the S23 Ultra maintained much cooler temperatures. Similarly, Samsung has also optimized high FPS titles like Injustice 2 and Mech Arena to run well, while both of them are locked at 60 FPS on the iPhone. Seeing all this, maybe I can finally convince my PUBG Mobile streamer buddies to switch to Android now. They all have been using the latest iPhones every year like clockwork, but things are totally different this time. Apart from this, one of the biggest ways the S23 Ultra has impressed me is with the battery life. This thing is as good as the iPhone 14 Pro Max, which is quite the achievement. So even under heavy usage, I'm getting at least a full day's worth of endurance from both of these phones. That's something I never experienced with any flagship Android phone before. I also ran a quick battery drain test to see how much charge these phones lose in the exact same conditions. And as you can see from this table, both of them have pretty similar battery consumption patterns, be it in media consumption, web browsing, or gaming. Unlike the battery, there is no upgrade on the charging front on either of them. That means the S23 Ultra does have a slight edge in this regard, since its 45-watt charger takes the phone from 0 to 100% in around an hour, while it takes almost 2 hours to completely fill up the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Alright, finally it's time to talk about their cameras. Here, both Apple and Samsung have upgraded to a higher resolution sensor. The iPhone 14 Pro Max gets a 48 megapixel main camera instead of 12 megapixels, whereas the S23 Ultra jumps from 108 megapixels to a mammoth 200 megapixel sensor. I took a lot of photos and videos from these two phones, like over 500 photos, and I can tell that Samsung has significantly upgraded the photography side of things on the S23 Ultra to deliver the most pleasing photos. S23 Ultra's both main and ultra wide angle cameras tend to shoot photos with vibrant colors alongside extra pinch of brightness. And this type of processing looks especially eye-pleasing when shooting a landscape or any far-off object. On the contrary, the iPhone leans towards moody and contrast-heavy processing, which is better suited for close-up shots or a statue. Also, when you're shooting moving subjects like your pets, the iPhone 14 Pro Max maintains better sharpness thanks to its relatively quick shutter speed. There is an app called Camera Assistant for the S23 Ultra to reduce the shutter speed to some level, but it's still not as fast or as reliable as the iPhone. One more thing, switching between different lenses also feels super smooth on the iPhone, while it's still not as fluid on the S23 Ultra. But for zoom shots, the S23 Ultra is simply way too ahead, as its periscope camera is capable of shooting 10x optically zoom or even 100x digitally zoom photos. Whereas the iPhone 14 Pro Max maxes out at just 15x digital zoom and clicks potato moonshots like this. I also prefer the S23 Ultra's processing when shooting human subjects most of the time. It produces a nice rich skin tone which looks pleasing to the eyes. But iPhone is no slouch in this area either. I like how it processes shadows on the face, producing an even skin tone, while Samsung favors a little contrasty output. In terms of selfies, I like Samsung's results better. They just look livelier than iPhone's and have better highlight control. It even shoots better portraits in low light conditions. On that note, I also found S23 Ultra's low light photos to have slightly better exposure, highlight control, and noise control most of the time. But its night mode processing is not that well optimized and looks very overprocessed. Samsung's camera updates include improved videography too. From updating the OIS offset area by 2 times to improving 8K recording, there's a lot to be impressed by here. But I'm still more fond of iPhone when it comes to videos. From overall video clarity to steadier stabilization and noise handling, the iPhone 14 Pro Max simply does it better. And because of a wider field of view, it's a better choice for recording selfie videos as well. Now, there are a few extra features that truly make these phones stand out among the rest. For the S23 Ultra, there's the built-in S Pen that lets you take notes, shoot photos without holding the phone, and draw sketches like no other. And you can even get more productive with this phone by using decks. On the other hand, the alert slider on an iPhone is quite a useful tool you will fall in love with. Apple has also introduced a couple of potentially life-saving features like crash detection and emergency SOS via satellite on the iPhone 14 series. Okay, wrapping it all up, since my primary phone has always been an iPhone, I am a little biased, but this time I have to admit the S23 Ultra is offering a better overall value. Experience-wise, these two phones are quite different. I still prefer Face ID over fingerprint sensor, the iPhone works really well with my MacBook, and I love my Apple Watch. But this year, Samsung has absolutely outperformed iPhone in 2 big aspects where iPhones always had an edge. First, it's the performance, especially the gaming, and second, it's the photography side. Even the battery life is substantially improved here, something iPhone was constantly doing better than Android. So yeah, this year's S23 Ultra is such a spectacular smartphone that even lifelong iPhone users will want to consider it. Unless you want an iPhone as a status symbol and you like the lightning port. So everyone, that was all for my comparison of the S23 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I also did review the Xiaomi 13 Pro a while back, which you can watch from somewhere here. And don't forget to click the subscribe button right here. And thanks so much for watching. I'll be back with a new video next time.